Hello and welcome to the 12th devlog for Darkest Day, Brightest Night. This is going to be a longer one, got a lot of stuff to discuss. Spent most of August working on some other freelance related projects, designed some flyers for my own company and logos, site, etc. for a private contractor. So I didn't get around to actually working on this project. At least not that much. Once I was done with those things, I booted up GMS and I discovered that GameMaker Studio 2.3 had launched. Relatively small update, it adds a couple stuff, changes a couple stuff, but the implications and more importantly applications of the changes are massive. All the prep work that I had done was really useful. I converted all of the scripts into methods within the appropriate instances. And then the entire project crashed and burned. Everything broken. Scripts in GameMaker Studio have global scoping, meaning that they can be accessed from anywhere within your project. Methods do not have this property. They adjust their scoping to the instances they're created in, which means I have to go through all of my code, and every time I call in a certain method, I need to make sure that I call it through the instance it's created in. But that's not all. It gets worse. Arrays are changed. No longer are they differentiated between one-dimensional and two-dimensional arrays. They are now exclusively one-dimensional. But you can put multiple arrays within arrays and thus creating infinite amounts of dimensions within your arrays. This, however, meant that certain functions regarding these have been changed. The built-in functions that I used to use still work, but are outdated, so they need to be replaced as soon as possible. Which means I have to go through all of my code and replace all of them so that it now functions within the new system. The update also added structs. Structs are basically a lightweight version of an instance, where you have its instance name be a variable and it contains a bunch of other variables as if it were an instance. Structs do not get computed during a runtime, so they are only stored in memory and therefore very lightweight and extremely useful for grouping a bunch of variables together. This, however, also meant that I had to go through all of my code and replace all of the variables with structs whenever required. Common theme is I had to go through my entire code and convert it to the new version, which is why I added a new tag to almost every object within my Trello page, which is basically conversion in progress. Since then, I've removed a lot of those tags for stuff that has been completed, but you can easily track what I haven't converted yet on the Trello page. So last 2 weeks I started converting stuff, fixing it, everything. Started with the controller system. Camera controller completely done. Got some nice methods here that set your resolution and set your window scale. Got the game controller that creates all of the other controllers. This one didn't really require any adjustments. It is also the one that keeps track of our custom delta time. Keybind controller. This one had minor adjustment, made some methods that basically save and load itself, and allowed a menu system to reset your keybinds or change a specific key. It's simply waiting for a functional menu system before it can actually be used properly. But it is done, and that's important. Save controller. This thing had major change. Previously, I wanted this to actually save all instances or load all instances that required saving or loading, but that became too complicated. So instead, this thing now contains your root save and a bunch of methods to access certain parts of your save system, the save structure. And every instance that requires saving or loading handles it itself now. So I had to check every instance that saved itself and basically made sure that that was functional, that they had their own save and load systems. Got its own save system, got its own load system. Let me change this real quick before I forget. It's important to do it this way if you are declaring a method because of scoping reasons, all our stuff. Don't worry about it. Anyway, save controller, done. Works. Check the save files that save locally. It writes quite nicely into it. Completely finished. And then was the turn of the physics controller. Spent a complete week on this. Pretty lengthy days. I am still exhausted from fixing this one. Yeah. Started off with velocity, acceleration and impulse. Changed the arrays over to structs, which now hold an X and a Y, which allows for easier management. Velocity now gets updated separately from your movement. Added in a whole new system for calculating the stuff to counteract the common issue that you have with acceleration, where it's dependent upon your frame rate, and your frame rate would actively affect how your physics behaved. So, your position now gets updated at the begin of the step event. After that, your velocity gets updated in preparation of the next step. With that changed, I decided to also change the collision system. Made it a bit more performant, made it check your X and Y collision at the same time to make it more precise. Changed the collision checks for your cardinal directions to see if you were colliding with a surface, so that they now get checked whenever they're being called, rather than having a boolean store whether or not you are currently colliding, because that causes some issues within ordering them. If you have the check being done after you are required to know whether or not you are colliding, it could sometimes cause some bugs. This is very nice, the fact that I can now use methods for these. They now reset your movement depending on what direction you're moving in and if you're actually colliding with something in that direction. And it was all nice and done and polished. And I tested it and it exploded in my face. Thankfully, the official GameMaker Studio Discord has been very helpful, because boy did I have some issues with this. I decided to create a whole new function that would take all of the physics objects in the level, check for their type, check for all of the types your specific instance could collide with, then take all of the objects that were of that type, put them in a list, give the list to the collision function, which then checks for a collision with anything that's inside of that list. And this is not very performant, but it's operational, and I don't care because I'm still above 10,000 frames per second, which means nobody else is gonna care either. So, that fixed up, I decided let's make this a bit better. Why don't I have everything related to physics inherit from the physics controller? And that's exactly what I changed. No, it's not just the player and the enemies that inherit from this. All of the different types of terrain also inherit from the same physics controller. All of the creation code for entities specific, all of the methods they use, all of the variables they use, is now within a single initialization method, which can be called within entities specifically. Anything that's not an entity and just regular terrain contains minimal amount of data that specifies its type, the friction it has, etc., etc. This gives an enormous performance boost. Well, after that was done, I decided to fix a player movement. I wanted that completely operational and bug-free. And then I ran into another issue, which was my jumping algorithm. Formula, rather. Basically, the way you calculate your initial impulse velocity when leaving the ground is the square root of twice the jump height you want to reach times your gravity. I discovered that a year ago when I implemented this. I forgot to type the t, which took the square of this entire formula rather than the square root. After fixing this, I could implement a normal amount of gravity and have an actual regular lift-off velocity. The player basically no longer jumps to the moon whenever you press spacebar, which is really important. This also allows me to finally get around to fixing wall jumping and wall climbing, which I will do in the upcoming weeks. After this was done, I was like, almost everything is done physics-wise. Why don't I immediately fix crowd control? And why did I put crowd control within the player character? Let's move it over to the physics controller. And so I did. I moved them over to the physics controller, simplified them, basically knock back, knock up and knock down, give you an impulse velocity and stun you for saturation. And the stun is what keeps you from moving during the crowd control stage. And I can actually show it off to you. It is really, really nice. So I can stun myself, which I'm not gonna show because that's basically 5 seconds of staring at this. You're basically mobile during that time. You could get knocked back, which removes all your current velocity and then knocks you back a set amount. So no matter how you are moving, you will always be knocked back approximately the same amount. It works multiple times in a row as well. So if you just walk through a minefield, you'll be constantly knocked within a certain direction, depending on where the mine is located. Got a knock up, in case you are standing on a pillar that suddenly shoots out of the ground, it'll knock you up. And a knock down, which is basically a faster way to reach the ground. All of this is dependent upon a value I give to the method that creates that effect on the player. So I can increase this, decrease this. Very simple, very easy. This is the only line of code I need to actively call upon a crowd control function. And it is functional and done. Completely operational. No longer need to do anything about it. It is finished. Boy, am I happy that it is. Aside from that, I also did some changes within the player character when converting this one. Make sure it was able to load and save itself. Changed a bit with the level system. Previously I had a locked level and a free level for both the corrupted and non-corrupted version of the player. Decided to change it a bit. You now have a single amount of free levels, which are shared between your corrupted and non-corrupted version. You basically have the same amount of free levels for both of them. And when you lock in your free levels when defeating a boss, they get split in half and given equally to your corrupted and non-corrupted version. On true death, however, when you are in your mental arena and find your corrupted clone, if you win, all of your free levels you have accumulated will be stored within your non-corrupted version. If you lose, they get stored within your corrupted version. This will slightly influence the ending of the game. General ending stays the same no matter what you do, but the details will differ based upon how corrupted your character is. So better players will have a different ending than people that constantly die, for example. Aside from that, I changed a bit of the animation to work with the new movement system. Changed the new movement system so that it is actually functional with the new way velocity and position is calculated. It basically updates its position before it calculates its velocity for the next step, removing a lot of issues that were inherent of the old method. Running checks are also much more simplified. Crowd control works perfectly. It's really nice. Dashing I still need to fix. I'll do that together with wall running and wall jumping and the ceiling climbing that I have planned. Health. I adjusted the entire health system to work with methods. Basically still works practically the same. You basically have your 2 health bars, then your damage buffer, healing you get from attacking stuff will be put within the respective health types. No using structs instead of a whole bunch of arrays for these as well, which makes this much more readable. Death is currently not functional, and the attacks are also not functional. Did move all of the attacks into different methods within this specific player type. So if I add in more different player characters that the player can choose, they can have different attacks as well. It'll be very easy to do in the future, but I need to fix these because my projectiles are currently not converted yet. That's why these are currently not functional. So, next couple of weeks I will be focusing on converting the rest and fixing things as I go. Once the player characters done and the enemies are done, I can start animating as well, after which I can finally make that demo version so that people can try out the system and I can tweak the physics values a bit so that the running is smooth and jumping feels nice and stuff. Yeah. So, that's it for this devlog. I will make a new devlog when I'm done with the conversion and fixing, and right before I start animating. And yeah, I hope to get this done within 1, maybe 2 weeks. Might take a bit longer depending on how much I struggle on getting the enemies to work, because those things were not functional since before the whole update came, so I'll have most of my work will go into this. It's already really nice that the entire physics controller is completely done, so they can just inherit from that and use the same techniques the player uses. Main issue is going to be their attack system and their AI, because I'm not really that good at programming AI yet. Oh well, I could just learn how to do it. I learned myself HTML during August, and it's a really nice programming language, pretty easy. So, if I don't know something, I'll just learn it. Well, that's it for today. I will see you next time. I'll announce the devlog on the Facebook page as usual. This devlog will also be shared on that page and in the Discord. Links to the official Facebook page, Discord and Trello page will be in the description below. Hope you're all still interested in this project, or if you're new that you will get interested in your project. I'm trying to build a community around it to get feedback from people. It's kind of hard coming up with all of this if you're on your own, so it would be nice if I could get some outside input. Yeah, have a nice day, and I will see you next time.